welcome a representative from SAR Aviation Medicine via video conference. And for the Hansard record, could you please give your name and the capacity in which you appear today?
Good afternoon, Senator. My name is Dr. Sean Runacres, and I present as a representative of SAR Aviation Medicine.
Thank you. And I invite you to make a brief opening statement before the committee asks questions. Do you wish to make an opening statement?
Yes, please, ma'am.
Please go ahead.
So good afternoon to you all. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm honoured to present to you today on three broad categories: as a private pilot and aircraft owner, as a business owner at Moorabbin Airport, and as a designation aviation medical examiner, or DAME, where my role is to assess pilots' fitness to fly. I note that I am the medical director for the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, and while I'm not here to present in this capacity, I'm aware of and support the previous presentations our representative has made. As an aircraft owner, while I note the airports I use are generally in very good condition, there has been little apparent investment in general aviation once past the taxiways. Airport landing fees are climbing and operators are deriving income off airport land, with the income not being offset against airport costs. The operators then complain that the airports are a financial burden for the operator. At Moorabbin Airport, during the last 20 years under privatisation, little investment has occurred into general aviation. The operator will conflate routine airport maintenance with investment, but these are not equivalent. Early Moorabbin Airport master plans demonstrated 39 aircraft hangars. This year, 7 hangars and aviation buildings were removed and a further 7 are planned for removal. During this time, only 2 hangars have been constructed and the aviation footprint has been reduced from 225,000 square metres to 163,000 square metres. The 2 developments by Moorabbin Airport since privatisation are the redevelopment of the airport terminal building, which happens to house the airport management company, and the construction of a dirt hill made of PFAS contaminated soil, which now obstructs a previously proposed increase in runway length. This airport corporation is not developing commercial warehousing to support aviation growth. They are a property development or management company with an aviation problem. As a business owner in my work as a DAME, I conduct medical assessments at multiple regional airports. This requires the constant loading and unloading of bulky and expensive medical equipment from my office to my aeroplane. These are 700 metres apart. This is not fit for purpose. A standard medical consult room is a minimum of 12 square metres, though 15 square metres is recommended. My clinic room is 6 square metres. This is not fit for purpose. As part of my role, I undertake supervised urine drug screenings, which require witnessing the production of urine. This is as invasive as it sounds. This is done in a communal toilet off an open hall in a busy flight school. This is not fit for purpose. For 7 years, I have attempted discussions with Moorabbin Airport for appropriate facilities, but the airport has been unable to make anything available that would suit my purposes. But the airport has no issue plundering aviation land and spending billions of dollars constructing commercial warehousing. Now on to aviation medicine, or AVMed. I note that I am one of the busiest DAMEs in the country. AVMed is a truly broken system. How is it acceptable that a person compliant with their DAME and with a non-complex medical condition is required to have a government regulator pore through their medical history? Why can a DAME not decide? How is it that when a DAME recommends further investigations to a pilot, CASA will ignore the DAME's concerns? How is it that pilots can change DAMEs to get a desired outcome without raising any flags with CASA? How is it that a DAME and a patient's medical specialist can recommend a pilot as fit to fly, yet a bureaucrat who has never met the pilot can overrule the opinions of these 2 medical officers? Pilots are often asked to undergo inappropriate, sometimes dangerous, often very expensive investigations with no apparent air safety benefit and against medical specialist recommendations. Compare this to the recent non-aviation case of a senior Melbourne executive dying from an unwarranted heart check program instigated by their employer for no clinical indication. I am approved to issue private pilot medicals and sidestep CASA. In such a case, essentially, I take the role of CASA. Despite having no ability at law, CASA will oversee, review conditions I have set, and add other conditions to the medical certificate I have issued. If CASA believes a pilot has a diagnosis or thinks the pilot might have a possibility of a diagnosis, that diagnosis will not be removed from a patient's record or deemed satisfied despite evidence to the contrary. The safety pilot restriction is a grossly underutilised tool by CASA. Typically in medicine, I would be able to contact a senior medical officer for advice. CASA doctors are rarely available and are unlikely to return requests for contact. The internet-based medical record system is cumbersome, time-consuming, not well supported, and locks pilots and dames out far too easily. General aviation is a hell of a lot of fun. It's expensive and has risk attached to it, but the biggest risk is the regulator. I've previously tangled with CASA lawyers and separately have been threatened that if I don't act more for CASA, who pay me nothing, and less for the pilot, who pay for my service, that I could find my authority to act as a dame revoked. I do not recall when CASA last consulted with dames as a whole. The regulator will attend dame medical conferences and present information, but genuine consultation seems to be lacking. I have met many good people within CASA AVMed, not just doctors, but support staff, managers, and members of their legal team. I've seen 4 permanent and a few temporary principal medical officers come and go. My comments are not about individuals, rather a deep-seated culture that 4 PMOs have been unable to change. I would like to take this opportunity to formally invite any members of the committee to come to Moorabbin Airport and meet the people and see for yourselves how much general aviation is struggling. In finishing my statement, I know this is not the first time that the committee has heard what I'm saying. And as I said, while I'm not here in a formal capacity as an AOPA director, I do affirm the previous statements made to the committee. Once again, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to present today, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for your opening statement and for being here. This is a topic, the health of general aviation across Australia has been something that I've been concerned about for some time, and you've touched on a couple of issues that we'll talk about today. Let's start with the medicals. I certainly know that across regional Queensland, pilots speak with great fear of the CASA medical. And whilst I'm sure that there is an element that, by seeing you on a regular basis means that they're probably kept up to date on medical issues that are useful to them, I am concerned when I hear that you have the CASA bureaucracy. And like you, I think there are a number of great people at CASA, so that this is not personal. This is about systems and process, who then override the medical advisor who has provided the aviation medical. I want to ask you, do you have examples of where Australia uses different standards to the rest of the world, for example, in the testing of diabetes or in other areas?
To be fair, I haven't researched a lot of the rest of the world because I spend my time immersed in the CASA system. The only one that springs to mind is I believe the UK has a higher blood pressure tolerance. So that's a borderline change. I do know that different jurisdictions have different requirements on medications. I would have to go and research, but I would suggest that we are under a tighter system.
What is your opinion of self-declaration for basic Class 2 medicals and the consequences of that self-declaration?
So as a pilot, I think it's a great idea. As a business owner, you need to be aware that that is a portion of my business that I would lose, but I believe as a pilot that it is a fantastic idea. The question is where to set the parameters. If 100 people were to apply for a medical certificate today and 30 of them were to be excluded under that basic system for whatever reason, the question is, are those 30 people actually unsafe, or is it just that the system is too tight? And that requires a lot of investigation to understand.
Well, has there been any investigation of how we've led to this two-tiered medical system?
Not that I'm aware of.
Right. So, okay, that's an interesting question, is that implemented a change in the regulation to allow for a different system, but we're not sure. It might be a good question for CASA later to understand on what basis was that new category introduced.
Yeah, that's from my practice as a dame, I wouldn't have much to do with that sort of high level function.
Yeah, sure. Could you explain about instances where your decisions are altered by the aviation medicine section of CASA without your consent?
Yes, I had a gentleman with a history of depression. I had spent many years reviewing his medical file, and I was comfortable with his insight to his depression, his management of his depression, and his ability to self-ground when he became unwell with it. I issued him a 4-year medical. CASA stepped in and said, "We're not happy. We want him reviewed every year." So that's the first one where they've stepped in, where I've issued. I've made lots of recommendations about pilots, and they ignore those on a fairly regular basis.
Right. Is it a medical officer within CASA who is reviewing your decisions and making different decisions?
So it is a bit of a black box to exactly how it works with inside CASA. There are a number of doctors who review decisions or who make decisions. And I understand that if there are complex decisions, that they are sent to a pool of doctors to meet at a complex case meeting. I have tried to attend those meetings to get some insight, but most of the time I'm declined access.
Right. And so is that lack of transparency to I'm wondering why there is a lack of transparency, and I will ask that question of CASA rather than you. But
I would like to opine on that, because I think there's an element of they've made a decision, I've challenged their decision, and they're not prepared to put that review of the challenge into the public arena.
Well, this is a very serious topic, because particularly pilots who this is their profession, whether it be in general aviation, in charter, in helicopter mustering, or in jet aircraft, you know, it is people have come to me over many years saying, I've lost my profession, I can't have any input into it. I can see all the specialists in the world, but there's no transparency.
Can I give you 2 quick examples? I had an aspiring professional pilot who had a drug test that should never have been reported positive. 4 years later, he's still undergoing regular routine drug screenings at the cost of about $15,000 to $20,000. It should never have been reported positive, and I've written to CASA multiple times about this pilot. I've got another pilot just recently who somebody has made an allegation that he's had a seizure. He's had his medical suspended. I've put information in front of CASA that would suggest that he's not a risk, and said, can he have a safety pilot restriction? So aircraft with 2 full sets of controls, a fully qualified pilot sitting next to him? No, I can't explain that.
It doesn't seem to be apparently obvious, does it, why you wouldn't allow that as a restriction? All right, well, we will put some of those questions to CASA. I have received only as of today's date results of a survey of pilots as commissioned by Country Airstrips Australia in relation to the current PPL Class 2 medical, and I would like to table this report, which to the Secretariat, you should receive that shortly if you haven't received that already. This survey was conducted from the 8th of November to the 5th of December this year, and 790 pilots from across Australia participated. Are you aware of this survey and the results?
No, ma'am.
All right. Look, there are just some statistics that I will quote for you. 90% of the 790 pilots believe that the PPL medical requirements are excessive. Would you like to make a comment on that?
I can see how in some instances they are very excessive. I can see how in some instances some of the requests that CASA make bear merit. I think there's a communication issue and an expectation gap. The reality is, if you can drive a car, you're probably safe enough to fly an aeroplane. Are you safe enough to charge people for that? That's a different story. Though there are some finesse in that would need to be addressed.
64% of pilots have considered giving up flying due to the demands of the CASA medical process. What are your thoughts on that?
It doesn't surprise me, and as a private pilot, getting my medical is not something I enjoy either. And I like to think I'm a fit, young, healthy man. Well, maybe not young, but yeah.
It's all relative, isn't it?
Yes.
55% of pilots believe that Australia should adopt the RAAU's medical requirements, whereas only 4.8% believe that the current system should be retained. Would you comment on that?
I think there's definitely a space for a private pilot medical, but I very much appreciate that the self-certification process for a lot of pilots is entirely appropriate.
Okay.
The current self-certification is based on the commercial driver's license for a truck or similar, and there is a lot of merit in relying on that system. The problem with that system is at the moment is it requires an unmodified. So if I had a heart attack and I'm well afterwards, that's a modification under the commercial license, which I can continue to drive on, but the self-certification process we have at the moment won't let you fly on that.
Right, okay. Well, that's an interesting connection across to another professional operators industry, being the heavy transport industry. Look, I'll run out of time otherwise. I'll just pass and see if Senator Sterle has some follow-up questions to that.
Thanks, Chair. Dr. Runacres, I just want to drill down a little bit more. When you said that there was a pilot and you said something along the right lines of he should never have been reported positive or something. Can you give us a bit more detail? No names, no factual, but that statement left me sitting up there thinking, what was that all about, mate?
So there's a number of steps in a drug test, so when somebody comes back with a non-negative drug test, we start looking for further evidence. So the international standard for cutoff for accepted use, whether there's presence of metabolites. So, for example, if I were to go into the wrong place and touch the bar and lick my fingers, I might get some cocaine from that. That wouldn't be enough to be a positive test, but it might set the test off. So you have the standard of what the machine can detect, but you have the standard of what's actually use. Now, this particular person triggered the machine can detect, but didn't trigger high enough for use. So the next thing we do is we say, is there evidence that it's been metabolized by the system? Now, if it's been metabolized by the system, you would see secondary products. So this person was below the threshold for use, but above the threshold for detection, no metabolites. I, as a doctor who's trained in interpreting these results, would write to an employer or to CASA and say he has a negative result, even though he's had a positive finding. But CASA's taken that as a positive result and has, as I say, spent 4 years putting this gentleman through the rigor. $15,000 or $20,000 he's spending. Every 3 months he needs to do a hair test, which costs him $750. And I've written again and again to say this is not appropriate.
Okay, because I know in the trucking industry, crikey, our truckies get tested. Don't worry about that. Let alone getting a 9-inch bud shoved up their beak every time they cross the border. That could be twice a week. But coming back to, but isn't there a system? Is there not a system that says, okay, it's below the user threshold or whatever it might be, but enough to trigger there's something there. Is there not a follow-up one within a certain time frame that says come back in 2 days, 48 hours, and then test again? I mean, it's no different than we walk through the terminals at the airport. We get a zip, zip, and a couple of times it's happened to me where, come over here, Bucko, we're going to have to test you again. And something's triggered it, and then I've walked through. I know it's a bit different, but surely there must be something there that covers for those little slip-ups that might be found.
There is and there isn't. Essentially, once my best response to that is once CASA's got its hooks set in, it's got its hooks set in, and they're not getting them out. And as I say, I've written I can provide you a de-identified 3-page letter explaining why he should never have been done, and it's been ignored.
So this happened 4 years ago, did you say?
I would have to refer to my notes. I'm 2018, 2019.
Right. So, okay, a couple of years ago. So since then, he's had to have every 3 months certain tests above the normal tests, just to clarify that there is no drugs around. How have those tests been going? Obviously, they're okay. How have they been?
There's been one abnormality in the 3 or 4 years. He took some pseudoephedrine across the counter and didn't declare it. Again, it was sufficient to raise an eyebrow, but from my point of view, not sufficient to withhold his license. And so he is still flying, but he is still under that level of scrutiny.
Okay, I'm sure.
Don't get me wrong. If somebody, I made a recommendation to CASA that somebody had a problem with alcohol and that they shouldn't be issued with a medical. Again, CASA ignored my decision, so I'm not out to say anybody who uses drugs can go flying. You know, I've got limits, and I think I've got appropriate limits, but CASA won't listen.
I'm sure Dr. Alec will have an explanation for us. So, Dr. Alec, when you do come on today, we really want to, let's not talk around in circles. Let's get a real clear answer to the question, because after all these years of talking in circles, I'm over circles. Anyway, Dr. Ranakis, thank you very much. Chair, we'll come back to you, as I know you're keeping an eye on time.
Thank you, Senator Sterle. Look, is there anything specifically for general aviation, for the successful operation of the industry that you would like to specifically get on the record today and for this committee to provide a recommendation on?
I would like to see more autonomy for the medical practitioner who's eyeballing the patient. I think that's really important. I would like to see better management of privatisation. They would be my 2 key things that I would like to see. I think it's important, as I say, I'm not here as an AOPA director today, but I am well aware of a lot of what they've said. It's true what they're saying.
Thank you. And I think we'll hear more evidence on the airports from some of the later witnesses, but thank you for raising it. I think the conditions you're operating in sound extraordinary, given that as an aviation industry, medicals are such a significant, important part of the licensing process. And yes, I am pleased that as far as the Senate, we're not having to provide a urine sample in public conditions every 12 months or so. That would not be a pleasant process, and a joy for you, no doubt, having to operate doing that every day. So thank you very much. I'll let you go. Thank you for your submission and your time today, and please go with the committee's thanks.
Thank you. And if there's anything else I can do.
Thank you.